Well, hello and welcome back to the Lamppost Listener. My name is Daniel.
I'm Phil.
And this is a podcast where we chronicle transcendent truth by traveling further up and further into the classic works of children's literature.
This is Season 10, Episode 3, The Reprieve, which covers Chapter 3 of The Hobbit.
This is Silly Songs with the Elves. This is
right.
another name for the chapter.
Some of these songs are...
We really only hear the one song. We're told there's more.
Mm-hmm.
We only get the one.
We only get one fully transcribed.
But we're told they're all pretty goofy, pretty silly.
Yes. From what you've said, the audiobook does contain these.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And we get to hear kind of a made-up tune with these. Not in the films at all.
I don't think so.
Which I think would kind of pull people out.
When we go over the movies over on Patreon, I'm very familiar with that first hour of the first movie because I actually really like it. I think the first hour of Unexpected Journey is great, and then everything after the first hour is not, and that's true of the rest of the trilogy.
That's true for all 7 hours that
follow. The 7 hours that follow. There's still other good moments, but there's not another hour long segment that's like, oh, I'm really enjoying myself for a long period of time and not incredibly frustrated with some of the choices that have been made. And so I'm...
Speaking of being incredibly frustrated with choices, when we hit 1,000 patrons, we've decided to do a full version of this song sung a cappella.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Remember we did used to do this over on Patreon the very first year we had it. We were like just getting those first like 25, 50 people or whatever. And it was like when we had 10, we did something, and we did something for... Didn't you do like an illustration for the first... Like 15
we may have
people?
done a sticker, or
a
was
sticker
that for reviews?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't done that in a long time. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them.
Coming
it's
in
just,
so fast.
we couldn't produce something every time we hit a big milestone. Well, Phil, this is a fun chapter, very short chapter, it is about...
It's a short rest in multiple ways.
In many different ways. I've got a couple of extra things for us at the end of this chapter in our Enchanted Epistles section, because I know that this chapter itself is a little bit shorter. And before we dive into that, though, we should do the summary, and we should go through this whole chapter.
Yes, let's hear a summary.
Well, here we go. This is Chapter 3 of The Hobbit. Thorin, Bilbo, and the dwarves, still recovering from their fright with the trolls, follow Gandalf to the feet of the Misty Mountains. Traversing a mystical path, they eventually arrive in the Valley of Rivendell and at the last homely house. Here they are greeted by a merry group of elves who tease them with song. Despite the dwarves' dislike of all things elven, the company stays for a fortnight in the Enchanted Valley, enjoying the break from their adventure. During their time here, Elrond, the ruler of the elves in the valley, examines the swords found in the trolls' hoard and explains that they are well-known ancient blades. More importantly, he discovers moon runes on Thorin's map, which explain that the keyhole for the secret entrance will only appear on a particular day. Rested and prepared for the journey ahead, the dwarves bid the elves farewell and continue into the mountains.
Just a very brief respite.
A little 2-week break they get there.
Yeah.
This is such a unique chapter. You know, you and I have been talking about trying to read The Hobbit through the lens of, sounds silly, reading The Hobbit. Like not trying to compare it to Lord of the Rings, not trying to contextualize it for the Silmarillion and all the rest of the Legendarium, but just trying to read it as this book of children's literature, the way we might have read it in 1937, even though obviously there's been some revisions since then. And yet this chapter presents to us, I think, two difficult things when trying to do this. One is that the elephant in the room here is that the elves that appear here in Rivendell are, or at least at first glance, appear wildly different than the elves in either Lord of the Rings or the Silmarillion. We're not going to get too deep because, again, I said I'm trying to do this, and here I am going. These elves are Noldor. These are high elves. These are not the wood elves. They're not Sindarian. These are Noldor elves, the highest, most regal of the elves. And if you read the Silmarillion, most of these elves have been around for millennia or more. They were probably most of them around during the First Age. We're now in the Third Age of Middle-earth. And these elves are kind of goofy and silly. And I do want to share a little bit about that in a minute. And then the other thing that's tricky is that this is really where Tolkien's Legendarium actually comes into the text, because we learn about Glomdring and Orcus, which are the two swords found by Gandalf and Thorin in the previous chapter, and we're told they are from Gondolin, and that's even in the very first edition of this book. So that's not a revision after Tolkien's worked on the Lord of the Rings. No, he puts Gondolin in there, the city, this elven city from the First Age that's destroyed, you can read about in the Silmarillion, into the text right here and puts it into a larger part of the story. So like we almost can't ignore that, because there it is right there.
Yeah.
So it's weird, because at the same time the story is becoming more entwined with the Legendarium, and yet the behavior of the elves make it feel more distant all simultaneously.
Yeah. And I'm curious if it evolved or if he was doing this intentionally. It really seems like it evolved later, because it's such a stark contrast. But then when you mention how the stuff with the swords has been there the whole time.
Well, why don't we begin with this arrival at Rivendell? So Bilbo, Gandalf, and the dwarves, they are kind of shaken up, as I mentioned in the summary, by this encounter with the trolls, and they're wandering a bit before they make their way to Rivendell. Bilbo has that great line where they see a mountain as they're getting closer to the Misty Mountains, and Bilbo's like, "Is that the Holy Mountain?" And Balin's like, "No, dude."
Yeah, right at the very beginning. You have no idea.
We've got a long way to go after we get over those mountains.
And then once we get out, once we get there, then we have even more to go till Smaug.
We haven't gotten there yet, but not Smaug. So they do continue on, and we hear that Gandalf has sent word ahead that they're going to be going to Rivendell, to the last homely house, but it's not easy to get in there. I'm going to actually read a paragraph here. Morning passed, afternoon came, but in all the silent waste there was no sign of any dwelling. They were growing anxious, for they saw now that the house might be hidden almost anywhere between them and the mountains. They came on unexpected valleys, narrow with steep sides that opened suddenly at their feet, and they looked down, surprised to see trees below them and running water at the bottom. There were gullies that they could almost leap over, but very deep with waterfalls in them. There were dark ravines that one could neither jump over nor climb into. There were bogs, some of them green, pleasant places to look at, with flowers growing bright and tall, but a pony that walked there with a pack on its back would never have come out again. And then just skipping down about a paragraph and a half, here's kind of the end of this description. Tea time had long gone by, and it seemed supper time would soon do the same. There were moths fluttering about, and the light became very dim, for the moon had not risen. Bilbo's pony began to stumble over roots and stones. They came to the edge of a steep fall in the ground so suddenly that Gandalf's horse nearly slipped down the slope. And that is where they actually enter into this valley of Rivendell.
He does such a good job here of describing something otherworldly with terms that we can understand, but it gives it this strange feel. And then he also has this great transition where Gandalf almost falls off, but then his response is, "Here it is at last," and we're immediately where we're supposed to be,
brought into this very safe, comforting place, right? And I don't know if you've seen it. Maybe I'll find a picture in the description, because I don't know the name of it. Tolkien's actually inspired by a valley that's in the Alps in Switzerland that looks kind of like this. And he did, I should send it to you, I don't know if you've seen him, he did some of his own illustrations for Rivendell, like in the 1930s, like full color and everything, some watercolors, which are really great.
I don't have them in full color, but I do have this Rivendell.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. I love that.
So we're looking at the annotated Hobbit revised and expanded edition.
Yeah, I'll put the name of that valley in Switzerland that inspired Tolkien, as well as some of his own illustrations, because it's
Lauterbrunnen.
Oh, is it actually? Does it say that there?
Yeah. I'm excited about the one person in Switzerland who just heard me.
Yeah.
Lauterbrunnen.
That's great. So getting into this valley is this safety just is there for them. And what's interesting narratively here is that the adventure started maybe 15 pages ago. It's always intrigued me that Tolkien has this rest occur in chapter 3. Like, you've got your actual text in front of you. What page are we on in the book?
When the rest occurs, it starts on 45.
Like, we're on page 45. Like, this is the very beginning of the book in many ways still. 19 chapters, only on chapter 3, and we're getting kind of this much needed, and it isn't still needed, rest. Why do you think Tolkien does this right here?
I think this is how he would do it.
Okay.
I think he would travel a little bit and then rest up and then really stock up on supplies, tobacco, food. And that really does seem to be what they do here. They do this first little bit. They get out of their comfort zone. They take on the trolls. They go a little bit more, and it's only a few pages to us, but it does take several days. And it says at the beginning, let's turn it back. They're not singing or telling stories, and they don't do it that day. And even though the weather improved, not the next day nor the day after. So they have been doing stuff, but this becomes a brief break. They restock, and then they go out. And there's something really comforting about it, and it really makes you nestle into the story.
Yeah. One of the things I was just looking up as you were talking is I was wondering, well, maybe they had to do it because that's just the geography of Middle Earth, right? I mean, if that's where Rivendell is, that's where Rivendell is. But I was actually looking here, and this actually hasn't come up in some of the stuff we've been reading, whether it be the history of the Hobbit or the annotated Hobbit or Coriolson. At least hasn't come up that I've found. But that map of Middle Earth that we all know and love has not really come into existence at this point. And so it's not like, oh, Tolkien had to put this right here because that's where Rivendell is. In fact, I do know that in Anderson's annotated Hobbit, he regularly has a couple of changes, even in this own chapter, that Tolkien has to make the geography line up. So, for instance, they cross the ford of Bruinen, right, right here outside of Rivendell to get into the valley. Well, Frodo also crosses that when he's brought over by Glorfindel and Aragorn after he's been poisoned by the Morgul blade in Weathertop. And there's supposed to be, I think, more than two. I can't remember exactly how it, but Tolkien originally only had one river, but in Lord of the Rings there's two rivers. So he had to go back and change it here in this text. So I guess in a lot of ways that this is more of a narrative choice than it is a forced world building choice.
Yeah. He says in the original, one afternoon they forded the river, and then later in the 1966 version, one morning they forded a river, allowing for multiple rivers and changing the time of day.
Yeah. And obviously many of these things were going on in Tolkien's brain. Like, it's not like he had no idea of the geography, but I even found the very first map produced of Middle Earth, the first like full drawn one, is 1953. So, and again, a lot of these things are already happening. In fact, when we talk about Gondolin a little bit, the first appearances of Gondolin where we know where Tolkien's writing about it is 1916. So we're talking 20 years before this book's even written. So a lot of these ideas are going on in Tolkien's head. There's many fragments and manuscripts. They just aren't coalescing in one particular place, which is probably helpful for some of our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with reading some of the history of Tolkien's works. Unlike, when we were reading Lewis, and Lewis threw everything away, and there's almost nothing that exists manuscript-wise for him, right? Like, that's why the LaFay fragment is so wonderful, because we don't have that a lot, right? Yeah. But for Tolkien, we have so many of his manuscripts, but he often would start and would write and then go to a different thing and write. Lewis tended to kind of start a book and finish it, with a few exceptions, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He usually started a book and finished it. Tolkien was all over the place. Yeah. And so it's hard sometimes to be like, okay, we have this manuscript, but maybe it's not dated. So when do we think he's writing this? We can look at some of the things that he was doing. Okay, now we can try to place it. It's a little bit trickier.
It also makes me appreciate that he was able to keep track of this stuff in the 1930s when everything is on paper, it's either handwritten or typed. You can't search it as easily as you can now.
It's not what do people call it in the tech world? Your second brain.
Yeah.
Is that isn't that like a saying in the tech world?
That phrase personally annoys me, but
do people use it like unironically?
Yes.
In your work life?
Yeah. You know the note taking app Obsidian?
No, I've never heard of it.
It's the one with. Are you sure?
I've heard of Notion.
I using. No. Well, yeah, Notion's one too.
I've heard of Apple Notes too.
People, yeah, people love connecting all their notes together, and then it's a second brain because everything's connected. But I don't fully understand. And besides how fun it is to connect stuff, I don't understand the point of.
Every time I've tried to use stuff like that, like at work, we have to use Microsoft for everything. So I have Microsoft OneNote.
Yeah,
and
it's even worse.
And I'll use it every once in a while because someone else will send me stuff in it, and then I'm like, I don't think I'm smart enough to like. It's just a Word doc, but I can do less. Because that's what it feels like to me. And I know that actually it can do more, but all the other things it can do, I'm not interested in doing. So it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. The other one that I think of, the other big world that had a lot of stuff stay correct in a very large work was Dune. And his son points this out in either the introduction or the postscript thing that he did. It moves around depending on which edition you have, but do you remember the one big mistake in Dune?
No, what's the one big mistake?
The one continuity error is that the Emperor is described as a young man at the beginning, and then he's described as an old man, and it's all within the same year.
Interesting. And it just, did it ever get fixed, or?
No, but what's really impressive to me is that that's the only mistake.
Wow.
Everything else is so thoroughly built out. And I'm curious for Tolkien, did he just have it all in his head?
No, he had so much written down. That's why we have all of it. I mean, we have, how many volumes are the history of Middle Earth?
I know he wrote it down, but did he also have it in his head where he didn't need to refer to stuff and say, now, what did I do with this character back then?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. He did. Yeah, that's a good question. We should. There's probably some resources out there to help us understand Tolkien better.
Yeah.
Well, let's
get come a flood of emails.
Yeah, let's get back to the story itself, so that we do get into Rivendell. The elves sing their song. It is quite silly, and I think so. Some people, some of the things that I've read, go about saying, "Well, here's the way that actually it does work, and here's the way where these high elves." It actually makes sense. It's not there's not some kind of break in the canon, if you will. And
honestly, if they slowed this down and had Enya do it, I'd probably
you'd be like, I'm into it. That's fine. I will say that I'm just someone when I read this, I just don't really care. I like it. I think it's fun. The elves are a little silly here, but even when Elrond shows up later, I think it doesn't. I don't think what their actions here undercut everything that occurs in the rest of the Legendarium. I don't go, oh, well, this doesn't even feel the same. Like, no, like, well, during the War of the Ring, things are just more serious, right? The elves are now leaving. They're going back across. They're going back across the sea. Here, they're just more merry. And I think you look at Tolkien as kind of both pulling from some of the Victorian and Edwardian view of elves, kind of the more fairy-esque. Think like Smith of Wootton Major, which we already got to read, that kind of sense of fairy, right? But then he's also got the more elven out of a more Nordic sense as well too. And I think he's kind of just combining those two things. Elrond brings that more Nordic sense, whereas the elves singing here bring the more Victorian sense.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on the Edwardian versus Victorian?
No, just of those two, like of that same
time.
I'm not saying they're any different, but from Victorian into the Edwardian era, though think J.M. Barrie, think Tinkerbell. That's okay. I know, like think that kind of, not just a fairy, which we already talked about some of the etymology of that last season, but that kind of playfulness that you get in fairies there, that is the kind of playfulness we see here in the song.
Yeah.
Well, the elves, they are welcome. They do seem to know quite a bit already about Bilbo. How much of that is them just being wise, and aware of things, how much of that is like Gandalf just gave them all the information? Like, do you think
Yeah.
Gandalf's like, his would be a great prank? I'm going to tell you like a couple of their names. I'm going to tell you Bilbo, like, and you just like make fun of him. It'd be great. Like,
Yeah. Work it into a song.
Yeah.
He'll love it. This
Well,
is his first trip ever.
Well, they do get there. They get settled in, and there's just a really wonderful, I think, just one sentence segue that Tolkien has after they're brought in to the last homely house. We're actually not told what happens while they're there, and here's what. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it says, "Now is the strange thing."
Yeah.
Do you want to read that sentence?
Now it is a strange thing, but things that are good to have and days that are good to spend are soon told about, and not much to listen to, while things that are uncomfortable, palpitating, and even gruesome may make a good tale, and take a deal of telling anyway.
And so he's like, I don't have much to tell you. It was just a great time.
They had a really good time.
That is true. You and I, both of our families here, we're recording this in the summer. We're both getting ready to go to the beach with our families. There are vacations you go on, and you come back and you have so much to share. It was a great trip, right? Like when you went to like Scotland not too long ago, right? Come back out to share. Then you go to the beach with your family, or you just go somewhere like that kind of very restful vacation. How was it? It was great. I didn't do anything. Like there's no stories to be told. Yeah. I got up. I did the same thing every day. I went to bed. It was wonderful. Yeah. And it's kind of like that's what they're experiencing right now.
They're just hanging out at the house.
That's in some ways just like true rest. I love that. We do, though, learn about two particular things that occurred during this time. We are introduced here. This is where we're introduced to Elrond, the master of the house, and he tells us about the swords. He says you've got Glamdring here. I think it's actually Glomdring, the way it's pronounced. Glomdring and Orcus, and they are made by the king of Gondolin. In fact, Glomdring, which means foe hammer, and by the way, Orcus means the goblin cleaver. Glomdring was the king of Gondolin's sword. Well, here's the interesting thing, and I actually believe Tolkien would have known this at the time because he's already been writing a lot about Gondolin for the last 20 years. I think it's great-grandfather, not just grandfather. Elrond's great-grandfather was the king of Gondolin. His name was Turgon. And so, like, that is his own granddad that's right there. And it's a little weird that he doesn't mention, like, oh, like, actually, that's, like, not to like, you know, toot my horn, but, like, I know the guy who used to have that. Yeah. Because I think Turgon had a son, and I don't remember who his son is, but then his son is Arendelle, who is Elrond's father, who's the light of Arendelle you can hear about in Return of the King. That's where he gets name dropped. And so this is this kind of connecting piece to all these other things. I don't have an answer to this, but I do, wonder what's going through Tolkien's mind as he's writing the first manuscript of this, and like how much is he putting those other stories there. The more interesting conversation for you and I and the kind of work we do on this podcast is what is this doing for readers of the story as it builds it out? Because think so far, here's the kind of places that have been named. The Lonely Mountain, the water, right? The
history,
the hill, right? Yeah. Like all of these things, they're very. We don't get a lot of details, and yet here's Gondolin and its king and stuff. All of a sudden, there's this peak of into another history.
Yeah, it makes it feel very lived in, and it makes you want more. And thankfully, there is more. There's so much more to dive into.
It's also interesting that Tolkien chooses to do this here at Rivendell, and it makes so much sense why he does this. Well, we've been in the Shire and in the like the Wilderlands, right? And as we've been in those places, they're really disconnected from the rest of Middle Earth. Here in Elrond, here in Rivendell, we find this connection to the larger world outside. And this is such a big part of Bilbo's characters. We think about this Tookish and Baggins-ish nature is here. Bilbo's actually getting a connection to something much larger. Right now, I left the Shire. I'm going to the Lonely Mountain. I don't think it's a mistake that Tolkien has Bilbo ask, oh, is that the mountain? He's reminding us Bilbo's just really out of his element here. I mean, he really doesn't comprehend the scale of the world. And then here we get, these swords, and I don't think he mentions they're from the First Age, but Gondolin is destroyed in the First Age. So we're talking a very, very long time ago. And for Bilbo, as he's hearing this, I assume that maybe, he maybe knows a little bit. He's heard a little bit about Gondolin. We know that he's even met elves before. We get a mention of, when he has met elves, he's liked them or been a little afraid of them for good reason. Not just because of the songs, right? And so he has a glimpse that there's something much, like there's other adventures occurring, not just right here. Like this is not the only story going on right now, just the one that he's a part of.
Right.
I love that for our young readers. They hear that and they go, oh, what other, and this is great. It's like, what other stories are going on in Middle Earth right now?
Yeah. And what other weapons have cool names?
I mean, this is you and I felt like this all the time with Narnia. We're like, what other stuff is happening? And the answer is nothing because Lewis doesn't care. But what's great about Tolkien, and again, we love Lewis, don't get me wrong. What's great about Tolkien is like, what other stories are occurring? It's like, actually, we know at least 15 other ones right now. You know what I mean? Like, we have a timeline. We can look at all of these things. And that's kind of fun to think about what's been different as we've read through these Narnia books for so long.
Yeah. Also, Elrond's interesting because he sees these swords from so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
He clearly is very educated or very intelligent or a combination of both in that he can read these runes. He identifies them. He doesn't say it as clearly as we know it, but they're his great-grandfathers.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely from Elvish something. And then he goes, "Keep them well."
That's what I think is wild. Okay, here's a legitimate question that might upset the Tolkien nerds, which you and I are part of that community.
We're in training.
We're learning to be better at these things. If I was a real nerd, I would have known Elrond's grandfather's name. So,
well, my favorite part of you giving that quick history is that you're wearing a baseball cap and a Carolina baseball T-shirt. Total jock outfit.
Right now, yeah.
And then
Let me tell you something.
You're saying some of the nerdiest stuff I've heard.
Let me tell you some Elvish stuff right now. Here's a question. Is Elrond just lying to them? Like, is he totally mad? Like, he has no idea what they say. He's like, these swords are terrible. They're garbage. Like, and they've got some markings on them. And he's like the I don't know, the tattoo artist in Thailand where some tourist comes in and is like, I want some I want something here on my arm. And they're like, we're gonna make it say like I smell bad or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not gonna know. Is that what's happening? Because this would make sense as to why he's like, yeah, you guys can keep them. Yeah. You know, and he maybe
we sell these down the road at the Elvish gift shop.
And he's like, well, and the reason he picks Gondolin is like, oh, that's just his family's. He's like, that's the only city I know. Because that was my great-granddad's city. Yeah. He doesn't have another city to pick. He's like, I know Rivendell and Gondolin.
Oh, yes. These are from Goldsboro.
Yeah. He's like, I actually don't know Taniquetil. I've forgotten these things. So I'm going to go all in on the stuff I know. And that way, if they ask for more information, I know enough about Gondolin. I could make some stuff up, you know? Yeah. And that's why he doesn't name drop his great-grandfather, because they're like, oh, they might be able to check and realize that's not true.
Yeah, and realize that I'm probably pulling from my family history.
Yeah.
You know what it makes me think
these
of?
Aren't real. This is we've discovered something. I didn't mean to interrupt you. We need to call the Tolkien estate or Tolkien Gateway. I think that's like their Wikipedia page, and be like, we've got to change this. Elrond was messing with them.
Yeah,
because all the other elves were joking around. What if he also, like
and
these
other
elves,
who figured it out.
is also just messing with them?
It reminds me of. Do you remember the slick paper things that would come with the DVDs and the Blu-rays, and they would have the miniature copies of these weapons?
Oh yeah.
You could get like a letter.
You could order. I have one.
That was Sting
at my desk at school right now.
I'm sure you do.
I have Sting. My letter opener that I use at work is Sting. It's incredible.
Whenever I looked at those, especially the ring ones and the sword ones, I thought, man, I really want one. But you know what I really want? I want the real thing. I want the real one from the story, not some copy that's mass produced. Even if it's made out of real metal and really.
Would you ever buy one of those? I remember I went on, it was very odd, a marching band trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I hope many of our listeners have been able to experience Gatlinburg, Tennessee and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. This is where, just the only thing I need to tell you is this is where Dollywood is. This is where Dolly Parton's theme park is at. Have you been to Gatlinburg,
No.
Pigeon Forge area? It's great. It's awesome. It is something else. It's like it's Vegas for Appalachia. Like that's the best way to describe it. And
Appalachia.
I always say Appalachia. That's
It's the Appalachian Mountains, but it's in Appalachia.
Oh yeah, I guess that's right. We're Richmonders. We're Piedmont area Virginians, right? So you also grew up in the
Piedmont.
in the Piedmont part of North Carolina. So yeah, I was like, maybe no, you're not from the mountains either. We need to go ask someone from like Asheville.
Just
or
a quick
something.
5 hours from the mountains in the beach.
Richmond really is. I mean, we're 2 hours or so from Virginia Beach and about an hour from the mountains, and then like anywhere from 90 minutes to 4 hours from DC.
Yeah.
It just
Depending
depends.
on
It depends on many different factors, but it really
if
might be a
there's an
90-minute drive.
imaginary traffic jam.
Yeah, it might be 4.5 hours. No, so I was in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and you've been to places like this before. Every third store was a knife store. And we would have gone around like 2006 or 7, around then.
That was a great year for knives.
So not too long after Lord of the Rings had come out as the movies, and every store you could buy replicas of like Aragorn's sword or Glomdring or these things, which I really wanted to get those. Like, I feel like I will not be allowed to take that back on the marching band bus
on the tour
to
bus.
drive back to Virginia. So I feel like they will not be like, no, you cannot bring that knife with you.
Well, this part about runes makes me really I appreciate so much that Tolkien built all this out. He didn't just make some made up runes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why they're runes? Like, why runes in general?
Oh, well,
He talks about it a little bit.
Oh, I mean, do you already have an answer to this?
Well, I want to hear what you say.
I don't know.
I was legitimately asking.
No, I mean, I know that his relation to, especially again, we've talked a little bit about one of the things that drives Lewis and Tolkien to become such close friends is their love of Nordic myths. I mean, remember, before the Inklings, you have the Coal Biters, which is, I don't remember exactly how it all falls together, but it's based off of the Kolbitars, which is, I believe, a word that comes from... I mean, they loved... What does Lewis call it? He calls it the Old North, or the Ancient North, and he loves those kind of things. And there's a lot of runes related in that mythology. That would be my guess.
It was really what they were used for.
Oh, no, I don't know this at all. So
at the very beginning of the book, one paragraph in, runes were old letters originally used for cutting or scratching on wood, stone, or metal, and so were thin and angular. And just that detail alone, you're not going to have this fancy cursive script necessarily on metal. Mm-hmm. You're going to have these runes, which are these straight, thin lines that are more suited for this.
Which makes sense given what we know about the dwarves, right? You're going to have the elves with their writing be very beautiful and smooth and have this sense of kind of movement in their calligraphy, but the dwarves are going to be very angular and sharp, right? And very utilitarian.
Yes.
So what do these runes say? Because we find out that not just are there runes there, but there are moon runes.
And luckily he's able to read them.
Let's talk about that luckily part, because that's incredibly, incredibly lucky. Did you catch how this works out?
You can't see them when you look straight at them, and it says they can only be seen when the moon shines behind them, and what is more, with the more cunning sort, it must be a moon of the same shape and season as the day when they were written.
Yeah. So that is absurd, and this is actually where, and I actually think this is a really important moment. This is where we go from Bilbo and Thorin and them, but Bilbo's our protagonist, so let's focus on him. This is where we go from Bilbo is really lucky to there's something else going on here. Let's remember last chapter. Remember the lucky thing that happened back then was the fact that that key to open up the troll horde
just happened
fell out of William's pocket before he turned to stone. We talked about a couple of small little lucky things as well too, about him getting there in the nick of time right before they departed. The map itself kind of coming into Gandalf's possession appears like there's maybe some luck there. But at this point, this is just getting ridiculous. And we even learn not only did they get to read these moon runes, and who knows how long again they'd be able to, like, how long they have to wait before they could do that again. When they get to the Lonely Mountain, and spoiler alert, they will get to the Lonely Mountain and get inside of it, they have to only arrive on one day, on Durin's Day, which is kind of the Dwarven New Year. Mm-hmm. All of these things begin to shift from, wow, there's a lot of luck here, and to there is some kind of providence here. We've at least for me, once I read this, it's either just ridiculous or there's divine providence, something controlling this that wants this quest to succeed. And I think that goes into, we know that Tolkien has a lot of divine providence, especially we see this in other works of his, I mean, particularly Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. But that providence of Eru Ilúvatar, which I think we talked about during The Magician's Nephew. Remember we talked about the Ainulindalë? Mm-hmm. We talked about the creation of Narnia and then looked at it in comparison to the creation of Ea, the universe in Middle Earth. I think here, at least for me as a reader, this is where I go, oh, something important is happening here. And this also makes sense. Again, only if you're reading it to someone after 1954, we know that there is divine providence. It's that Bilbo's going to get the one ring. Like, the downfall of Sauron depends on this particular quest. And this all going correctly, right? Yep. Because the ring has got to get, because Bilbo isn't the ring bearer to Mount Doom. The ring's got to get back to Hobbiton. So Bilbo's got to pick up the ring in the Misty Mountains and somehow then get it back to his home so that Frodo can get, like, all of the, you start to realize, wow, something else is at work here.
Yeah. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's really where the chapter ends. We learn, that Durin's Day is the first day of the Dwarves' New Year, and that by midsummer's morning, it's time for them to leave and go into the mountains beyond. Any final things for you to add on here?
There's a little bit of a cliffhanger, a minor one.
Oh, really?
Gandalf says, "Is there any more writing?" And Elrond says, "Not to be seen by this moon." And then he folds it up and hands back the map.
That's true. Never even considered. Do you think there is anything else there? That'd be kind of cool to what if they'd waited 2 more weeks? It would be like, oh, actually, there's a way easier door. Like, there actually is a dragon trap door that will crush the dragon.
If you haven't found it by now, let's just give you the cheat codes.
Yeah.
We got a divine providence, this thing.
That was like I was the most annoying kid. Didn't we talk about video games recently? Oh, we talked about our dislike of video games on the dancing lawn this past month. Well, this is months away by the time people are hearing this episode. But I was the very annoying kid when I was playing a ton of video games as a child that would buy a video game or get it rented, whatever. And the first thing I do was, before I even played it, was go online and search all the cheat codes. Like, okay, invincible health. Okay, now I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to actually play the game itself.
Yeah, just absolutely ruin it.
Did you do any of this kind of stuff?
Yes, but I would go to the grocery store and copy the cheat codes down by hand into a notebook and then squirrel them away home and then type them in. I
went to a website called Game FAQs that I would go to, and it would be. This was even there's no images, because I'm talking like 2001, 2002 doing this, right? Yeah. And no images. It was like a giant thing of text. And it would be like, you could scroll down. I'm sure if it was a PDF, it'd be like 45 pages long. It's like, here's all how to play a game or something too.
Yeah.
All text.
Tap up twice, tap right.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Phil, before we actually get to our letters, I do want to talk about what will be in our next chapter. Next time we're together, we'll look at chapter 4. Chapter 4 is entitled
Overhill and Underhill.
Thank you. I was like, I don't remember what it is. So, Overhill and Underhill. And in that particular chapter, the dwarves make a startling discovery inside one of the caves in the Misty Mountains. That's going to be a lot of fun for us. So I have 2 letters for us to look at. They're both long, and I'm just going to read certain sections of them. And both of them come from right around the publication of The Hobbit. In fact, this first one, which is Tolkien letter number 15, is August of 1937, which is about a month or so before the Hobbit.
Release.
What?
Before the release of The Hobbit.
Yes, before the release of The Hobbit.
Which, as we all know, September 21st,
Yeah, you've got it memorized. You know it all. I'm so proud. See, you're getting there.
It was the solstice.
I didn't even think about that. So this is a letter to Tolkien's publisher at Allen and Unwin, and he is writing to his name. The guy's name is Firth, I believe, but he has a postscript, and that's kind of what I want to focus on. He has a postscript where he has some commentary on the kind of jacket blurb. That's not what Tolkien would have called it, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. On the first publishing, the first edition of The Hobbit. Here's a couple of things that people have said, and here's what's actually written about it on that jacket flap. J.R.R. Tolkien has 4 children, and The Hobbit was read aloud to them in nursery days. The manuscript was lent to friends in Oxford and read to their children. The birth of The Hobbit recalls very strongly that of Alice in Wonderland. Here again, a professor of an abstruse subject is at play. Is that how you say that word? Abstruse? It's not obtruse. I'm asking you. This is not a.
Is it with an A?
Abstruse.
Abstruse.
This was a newer word for me. Oh wait, look, my Kindle will tell me. Abstruse. That doesn't help at all because that sounds like a robot. Abstruse here. It just means obscure. I know that. I've just never said it out loud. So,
It's a self-fulfilling definition.
That's right.
I personally think we need to obfuscate more things.
There you go. That's
and
great.
then we can issue them.
So Tolkien, he's read this blurb and he has some thoughts to offer, and I think they're worth hearing for us.
Also, without hearing his thoughts, that's just a terrible blurb. It just seems like they did the most basic first draft.
Well, I will say that here, what I'm given in the revised and expanded letters of J.R.R. Tolkien has quite a few ellipses between it. I did not pause. Would you like me to read them again?
Okay, so there are all
pauses.
these ... dots.
Yes. How about this? Maybe J.R.R. Tolkien has 4 children and The Hobbit was read aloud to them in nursery days. The manuscript...
Did they print it out with the ...
was lent to the print. I would assume not. I assume this is just the context that we need.
Yes. Okay.
For this, I won't keep going. But yeah, it sounds choppy, but that's because I'm only reading the parts that I'm given here.
I'm glad I asked because I was pretty.
It was pretty terrible the thing they got there. So there's a couple of things that Tolkien has an issue with, and he starts off. He actually just lists the word, and then he says, "Here's my issue with your use of this word." This is such a philologist thing to do. Nursery. I have never had one, and the study has always been the place for such amusements. In any case, is the age implication right? I should have said the nursery ended about 8 when children go forth to school. That is too young. My eldest boy was 13 when he heard the serial. It did not appeal to the younger ones who had to grow up to it successively. Then he uses the word lent because it said it was lent to his friends in Oxford. We know Lewis is one of them. We must pass that, though strictly it was forced on the friends by me. The manuscript certainly wandered about, but it was not, as far as I know, ever read to children and only read by one child, a girl of 12 or 13, before Mr. Unwin tried it out. There is this story which I don't think it'll come up this season, but Unwin, who's again one of the people at Allen and Unwin, has his young son read the manuscript, and his son loves it so much, his son advocates for it, and that's part of how The Hobbit actually gets published. I thought this one, though, was really worth it here. Abstruse. I do not profess an abstruse subject, not Anglo-Saxon. Some folk may think so, but I do not like encouraging them. Old English and Icelandic literature are no more remote from human concerns or difficult to acquire cheaply than commercial Spanish. I have tried both. In any case, except for the runes, Anglo-Saxon, and the dwarf names, Icelandic, neither use with antiquarian accuracy, and both regretfully substituted to avoid abstruseness for the genuine alphabets and the names of the mythology into which Mr. Baggins intrudes. I am afraid my professional knowledge is not directly used. The magic in mythology and assumed history, and most of the names, the Epic of the Fall of Gondolin, for instance, are, alas, drawn from unpublished inventions, known only to my family, Miss Griffiths, and Mr. Lewis.
Hey, Mr. Lewis gets a shout out.
Mr. Lewis gets a shout out there. So this is so interesting to me because...
So is he saying that, yes, I do have this background, but I'm not...
It's not influencing me.
It's not... Well, it is influencing him, but it's not directly correct. He's not using these things directly. He is making stuff up and then using what he's made up.
Yeah, and it's hard because we don't have the original. We don't have that whole blurb there. But what he's kind of saying is, if you think that all of the, all of the things you hear in the story, the names and things are all just me playing off my professional knowledge, he's actually making the case that it's not his professional knowledge, right? That he's actually pulling from these unpublished things. He said, look, names like the Fall of Gondolin, this is why I'm bringing this one up for this particular chapter, are just from unpublished inventions. Like, oh no, Gondolin is not some like, it's not an Easter egg of like Anglo-Saxon.
Does that feel true? Do you feel like Old English was as close as commercial Spanish?
Well, you are asking someone who is part of the leadership team at a school that teaches Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, and no Spanish, French, or Chinese or German or something.
Well, if your students went 5 years and they took Spanish every year and they couldn't speak Spanish at the end of that, you'd probably be in a lot of trouble. But if they take Latin and they can't speak Latin, well, there's no one else to speak it with. So you don't have an issue.
There's a growing number of conferences that are spoken Latin conferences, and you go and use, because as you speak, the written writing and reading Latin is significantly different than speaking it, because it is harder, because you don't have natural places to just learn this, and there's ecclesial Latin versus very much kind of more the ancient, that would have been spoken in Rome itself. Right. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. Sorry. I very much am on the side of Tolkien in that, because again, he doesn't say that it's more useful. He says it's related to human concerns. And so, without turning this into a soapbox for classical Christian education, that's a really big distinction for him, is he's talking about its relation to human concerns, what we would, just call the liberal arts, or a liberal education, I should say, not even the liberal arts, but that being related to like the free education, right? What it means to study these things helps you understand what it means to be a human, right? And so he's not saying he's not putting down Spanish, he's not putting down other things, he's just saying, I actually don't think, right, that Old English and Icelandic literature is any more distant from answering the question, what does it mean to be a human, than Spanish is, right? That's what he's advocating for here. And we see Lewis do that so often, right? I mean, that's so much of the abolition of man is just him trying to make a similar point to that. He does it a little bit differently, comes at it from a different angle, but he's trying to help us understand utility and education have been too enmeshed really since the Industrial Revolution, and a lot of it since the Enlightenment, and especially through Dewey and some other people too. And so what they're trying to say is like utility is not the end goal of education. And so because of that, you can say, yes, it's related to human concerns.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just really love this. It gives us some information on where Tolkien's mind is when he's creating some of these things.
I bet they rolled their eyes so hard when they got that letter. Oh my gosh. Who signed this guy? Which one of you was it?
So I've been reading through some of quite a bit of Tolkien's letters, and I got to say, I think they were more than prepared for it.
Yeah, they probably knew.
A lot of his letters are quite like this, which is fun. Well, the other one I wanted to read was from letter number 17. It's related. That's why I wanted to put both of these in here at the same time. So Tolkien letter number 17 is to Stanley Unwin, and Unwin had sent Tolkien a letter from another author who had been given a copy of The Hobbit by the publisher, and they sent to them, and the other author has this to say. It's important for you to have this context. The other author, his name was Richard Hughes. He said, I agree with you that it is one of the best stories for children I've come across for a very long time. The only snag I can see is that many parents may be afraid that certain parts of it would be too terrifying for bedside reading. Okay, so Unwin passes this along, and then Unwin even says, my son, the one who read it and really helped lead to its publication, didn't really have much of a big issue with that. But he's like, I'm just passing this along. This is what this other guy said, who we sent it to. And I want to read to you a small snippet about that chest of drawers that Tolkien has to say. Curiously enough, chests of drawers have also given me trouble. I still think them rather ominous. My daughter, aged 8, has long distinguished between literary and actual terrors. She can take any amount of dragon and a reasonable dose of goblin, but we've recently had to change all the handles on the chest of drawers in her room because the former handles grinned at her, even in the dark. Not the subject matter, but the time is the real mistake. Bedtime is usually a foolish parental indulgence, popular, of course, because so many of the young folk will do anything to postpone the fatal moment. But as far as I can see, arithmetic is quite as likely to produce disordered sleep as dragons if administered, or self-administered, too late.
Interesting. Wow.
This is...
I've never thought about bedtime that way. That is brilliant. My son is just about to turn 15 months, so we're in a very different stage. But there is something about I just want to stay up a little bit longer. And if the way to do that is to listen to a story and to ask for a little bit more, that's such a brilliant way to, no matter what you win, if they go to bed early, then they get more sleep.
Yeah.
If they stay up, then you cram a little bit more literature into the day.
Well, I told you that we have been, after we finished up our family reading the Voyage of the Dawn Treader with the kids, we moved into our first Harry Potter book. So we've been reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And even tonight before, for our listeners, we record most of these after our kids go to bed. And as we were reading, we finished up the second chapter, The Vanishing Glass, where the snake gets loose, right? And my oldest is like, that snake talked. Like he's like, I'm used to talking to animals in Narnia, but this is in our world. Like that. So he's like, and then the next chapter 3 is the letters from no one. So he was like, what does that mean? So he was like begging. And in fact, I was late coming over to record here tonight because like, all right, we'll read the next 3 pages of the chapter until we get to the letter and then we'll have to stop. And that is that kind of, what I always want to encourage is I don't want it to be I don't want to go to bed. I want it to be I want the story to continue.
Yeah.
I want to live in this world a little bit longer. But I can also tell when he's like, I just don't want to go to sleep yet. And so I'll just be like, yeah, I guess you can read some more. But I also bring this up because it reminds me of that Lewis quote that we brought up many times that says, since it is so likely that children will meet cruel enemies, let them at least have heard of brave knights and heroic courage. Otherwise, you are making their destiny not brighter, but darker. Hughes, this author, continued, and he says, children seem mostly to have a natural capacity for terror, which you can't do much about. I mean, if you don't give them dragons to be frightened at, they will frighten themselves with an old chest of drawers. So I am reading The Hobbit to my own small boy without any qualms. So even outside of that Lewis quote, I wanted to mention this. No, I'm trying to remember, where are we? Oh, I just had read the Lewis quote, right? So as Lewis is reminding us, we want to hear of these brave knights, and because we'll find these things. We also have Tolkien in the same vein, but at it from a different angle, reminding us of, look, the chest of drawers can be scary, right? We don't have to be overly worried about what, we've talked so much about content for children throughout the years on this podcast, and that content's really not the main focus when it comes to appropriateness for children. It's not that it should, like, there are many books that you should not read with children because the content is not appropriate. But I think a lot of times when we're introducing something like the scary dragons, or like when I just mentioned we're reading Harry Potter, we had to start off by being like, so this little boy, his parents are murdered. Like, you know what I mean? So like we introduce it quite like that, but there's no getting around that story without Harry having dead parents. You cannot, like, the story doesn't work if he doesn't have dead parents. I can't smooth that over.
Yeah, or leave it out.
Or leave it out, right? But for us, we were like, well, many things can be scary. And I will admit that the first time we did that, bedtime took a little bit longer after the first chapter of Harry Potter, right? Because my kids, well, my youngest one didn't understand, which is fine. But my oldest is like, that's kind of scary. Did that guy come into their house? What happened? Because you don't know any of these details, but he's like thinking through them. And we talked about it, and I stayed in his room for extra 5 minutes, and then he was okay, right? But it's that same kind of, I like both Hughes's, and then you have Tolkien, just going a step further by, personifying this chest of drawers with them grinning at her, saying that, there are many things that are frightening, but the stories themselves, if the stories are good, those elements, that content that might be a little bit scary, well, that's, as Hughes is saying, you can read that really without any qualms, because some children are just going to get scared, but actually let them be scared of the right things, right? That's a very, non-modern take, right? It's like, let your kids be scared. It's actually okay to be scared of bad guys. Like, that's the good thing to be scared of.
I think any other option is worse.
Mm-hmm.
Just ignore it. Don't talk about it. Don't prepare them for it. Because there is stuff to be afraid of.
And G.K. Chesterton even has a similar thing where he says, fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed. And so it's that similar. I mean, all of these, authors are all in conversation with one another. Chesterton, Tolkien, and Lewis all kind of saying a similar thing here. And I just thought that was really helpful for us as we think through, a book like The Hobbit, which is very much a book for children, but because it is written with Tolkien's prose, and I still think it's quite accessible, but it's not as accessible as a book written in 2020, right, or 2025 when we're recording this, that I think sometimes we put off The Hobbit maybe a little too long because we say, oh, well, there are some scary elements in it, or, oh, some of the language is hard, and I think Tolkien, Lewis, Chesterton, kind of inviting us back into like, no, like bring these stories forth to your children.
Yeah.
Oh, these were great. I still just like Lewis reading a lot of Tolkien's letters. I'm like, this guy's prose is beautiful in a random letter to his this is a business letter. He's writing it to the guy publishing his book, and yet it's like, I mean, is he just showing off? No, I think it's just actually how he writes.
Yeah, he's a really good writer, it turns out.
Yeah, who knew? It took us reading his business letters to really finally figure that out. Well, Phil, this has been a ton of fun. Any final thoughts on any of these letters?
Similar to the children we were just discussing, it's hard to stop reading. It's hard. We try to cut ourselves off at the end of the chapter, but it's exciting when we've wrapped up an episode because now we get to journey forward.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go ahead and read our end credits?
Sure.
Before we return next time.
This episode is made possible by our patrons over at patreon.com. If you'd like to support the show, you too can then listen to an episode each month along with other rewards, a bonus episode. Special thanks goes to John Marr, Emily Wakefield, Ryan Smith, Andrew Trophy, Becca Brown, Christiana Lyon, and Ian Wooten for supporting us at our top tiers. Some of the money is going to go to a new screen protector for Daniel's iPad.
Because
I can't see the next part.
You're looking at my broken. It
looks like you killed a big spider.
One of my kids had to have done it because I just picked it up one day, and I was like, it's just sat on the dining room table after work, and I'm like, yeah, it's got, that's why I got the protector on it. It's fine.
Yeah. Someone smashed my neighbor's window, and he got it repaired. It was, I'm assuming it was covered because they smashed all the windows down the street.
This was a few years ago, right? I remember when this happened. That was wild.
But then
there's like a crazy dude. That
January 1st, someone shot his car. Like
what?
Point blank, put some bullets.
Where do you live? This is terrifying.
I live right
4 blocks away from you. I walk here. Like, this is scary.
He just drove the car to a dealership and sold it. He bought a new car. He said, I'm starting over. Listener feedback can be sent to hello@lamppostlistener.com. You can also leave us a voicemail at 406-646-6733. You can find links to past guests, reference books, and other things at lamppostlistener.com. A review on Apple Podcasts would also be appreciated. Thank you for coming along on this journey, and we will be back soon.